but I'm going to do it a little light because I want you to hear what I talk about. I'm going to ask everyone to. All right, awesome. Okay, no drums. Today's keynote speaker is a farm boy from Kentucky and a former high school English teacher who learned early on that leadership is less about titles and more about presence. Since then, he studied body language from a retired FBI agent and helped restaurants across the country turn trust into real strategy. He's an award-winning author of 5 books, the founder of the Trust Architect Group, and in case you're wondering, his favorite Buffalo Wild Wings is salt and vinegar dry rub. Please welcome to the stage today's keynote speaker, the Trust Architect himself, Justin Patton.
Well, good morning, B-Dubs. First of all, you all sure know how to make someone feel special, so thank you. I gotta tell you, I've been here for a couple days. I was here with the last region. Everyone brings the energy, but I'm gonna tell you, the last region, no one was dressed as a buffalo, no one was dressed as a chicken, and they sure didn't have a live marching band, okay? And no one had a Joseph wooing for them, y'all, okay? So I told Joseph I'm going to hire him, take him on the road with me, so I appreciate you. Joseph, what I love about you, brother, is I know if you're doing that here, I also know you're doing it in your sports bar, and I think it makes a really big difference. And so yesterday, Kirsten and Phil told you this day is all about you and your development. So my job is to pour into you both personally and professionally. So this is where we're going to start. I don't know what your all's first job was, but mine was as a 16-year-old kid. I worked at McDonald's in Mount Washington, Kentucky. And y'all, I loved that job. And part of the reason I loved it, I was making a little bit of my own money, and I felt a little independent. And for the first time in my life, I could afford a pager. Now, how many of y'all had a pager back in the day? Come on. Look how far we have come. Y'all, if you raised your hand, you were over 40 years old, okay? But I had a manager that was like, Justin, you have got to quit talking so much. And y'all know he was right. But he said this famous line that I know so many of you have said or you have heard. He was like, Justin, you got to quit talking so much. Blank is money. Now, y'all know what he said. What did he say? Time. Every one of you have a learning map on your table. I want you to grab it in front of you. And if you got a pen, in the top left corner, it says blank is money. And I want you to write on that, time is money. And listen, in your world and in the sports bar, is there some truth to that philosophy? Maybe. But I think you do your guest, your team, and even yourself a disservice when that is your philosophy. And I think all of us in this room should be having a bigger conversation, and that is that trust is money. So I want you to cross out the word time, and I want you to put the word trust over top of it. And I'm going to prove it to you. How many of you in this room, I want you to raise your hand if you ever had a customer service experience that you went through that went so bad that you never went back ever again. Raise your hand if you've ever had it. Yeah, I think it's most of us. Now I'm going to tell you who it was for me. So years ago, I used to go to Qdoba so much. I don't know in here, do y'all have Qdoba around where your area? It's kind of like Chipotle. I used to go so much. One day I went in, they were like, oh my God, we were wondering what time you were coming today. Don't tell people that, that's embarrassing, okay? And I remember I go in one day and I go to the counter and there's this new woman working. And I go to the front counter and I ordered a chicken cheese quesadilla and I asked for it to be grilled twice so it's like oozy and crispy. So from a timing perspective, they got everything right. They take my order, we go down the line, I'm standing here by the register while she's on the grill machine, and I see her hit the button once, I see her hit the button twice, and then all of a sudden, she hits it a third time. And I'm like, oh, it's gonna be burned. And I kind of leaned over the counter and I said, excuse me, ma'am, I just wanted it grilled twice. I don't know if any of y'all saw The Exorcist when that girl cranks her head around her body, but in slow motion, she cranks her head and in front of the entire lobby goes, I know. And all I remember, first I was embarrassed. And after embarrassment went through me very quickly, now I'm mad. And so my heart's starting to pound and my blood is starting to boil and all I can think about is I am about to go to jail over a chicken cheese quesadilla, okay? Y'all look at me, I am confident enough in myself to tell you, I can't make it in jail. I already know, okay? I cannot, okay? So I'm trying to hold it together. You laughed way too hard at that, okay? I see you. Okay, so I'm trying to hold it together. I'm getting more mad. She literally gets the quesadilla, comes to the front counter, pushes it really slowly towards me, and then does her little Beyonce walk to go help the next customer. And I remember I took that quesadilla, I went in the lobby, I ate my food, and when I left that restaurant, I took my loyalty, my finances, and everything good I've ever said about that company, and I never went back ever again. It is never about time. It is always about trust. And so I'm going to ask you this question. You're going to interact a lot with me today, so I'm going to give your table 30 seconds. I want you to tell me why this might be true in the sports bar. Why is trust your biggest competitive advantage in the work that you do? And I'm going to even say outside of work. I would even dare to say in your marriage. I would even dare to, how many of y'all have kiddos? Raise your hand if you have kiddos. I would say all of you as parents, it's even with your kiddos. Why would trust be your biggest competitive advantage? Take 30 seconds. I'm going to have you share with me. All right, what do you got for me? Just yell it out. What would you say? Why in this craziness? Yesterday I was listening to the executive team and we talked about this new acronym of WINGS and how are we gonna create a friendly experience and make things fast and all this. I think this is how we do it. And so you were gonna say something. What was your answer about why is trust our biggest competitive advantage? Yeah. It builds loyalty. And you're gonna see when I summarize it into one sentence, it's gonna hit on kind of what you're saying. What were you gonna say? Yeah, why security? Yeah. Here's what's interesting, okay? Was that an Allstate commercial? I don't remember, okay? I love that. What I love, though, about what you're saying about security is about safety. You can't have trust without safety. And part of it is, I know that if I come to you and give you some feedback that you're not going to have repercussions, that I feel like I can safe enough to talk about it with you. So many times when things or teams aren't performing, one of the first things I hear leaders tell me is, why isn't the team performing? And I'm gonna tell you, out of coaching hundreds of executive teams or teams in sports bars or restaurants, it is never a performance issue, it is always a trust issue. And what happens is when trust erodes, people stop talking to each other. They stop having the hard conversation. There is no safety, so we don't talk about or speak up and really push back when things should be going differently. Give me one more. Why else would trust be your biggest competitive advantage? What do you got? Yeah, what about it? Yeah. And here's the interesting thing that you're saying. When we say respect, trust isn't this touchy-feely thing where everyone's loving on each other and doing all that. Sometimes I respect you enough to tell you the hard thing. Sometimes I respect a team member or a server or a bartender to say, I need to coach you, and this might not be easy to hear, but I love you enough to tell you the truth. And understand that you're gonna see a slide later that says trust isn't always comfortable, but it is always safe. And so if I had to summarize it all into one sentence that I'm gonna encourage you to write down, it would be this, what you said about loyalty. Trust is the one thing that keeps people coming back again and again. That is it. So I want you to write this down, and once it clicks over, we will go. So trust is the one thing that keeps people coming back again and again. That's it. So it's why people stay engaged. It's why there's productivity. It's all this. Now, I know there's somebody in this room that is like, hey, this is great, but I don't just want that crazy guy's opinion. He goes, I'm a data person, so show me the data. So this is your slide. So I wanted to have a slide for you to say, why should all of you in this room, why should you actually care about what we're talking about? And so what I want you to see is this. There are 3 stats that I think every one of you should care about. Number 1 is over 50% of consumers said they will switch to someone's competitor after just one bad experience. So for all of you that raised your hand like me to said, hey, I had that experience that went so bad that I never went back again, we are in that number. By the way, that number is actually going up. In 2018, it was 32%, and in the latest study from this year, we actually see it go up to 50%. 88% of consumers said that the experience that they have inside, I'm gonna use your all's language, the experience in the sports bar matters more than just the product itself. So great that I love the food, but the entire experience matters more than just the product. And the last thing is that 54% of consumers said that most organizations and companies can just do a better job at creating this better overall experience. So my job before we leave today is to give you just a few things to think about, to say, hey, when you go back to your sports bar or you go back to the person you love, what can I give you some tips on how to maybe do some things differently to create an even better experience? So I want to define trust, because I think we got to get on the same page before we get going. We always define trust this way. Trust is the unwavering belief that you're going to have my back. Let me tell you why that's important. I'm going to break it down to y'all personally. That there are millions of people that woke up this morning that go to jobs where they feel their boss, their executive team does not have their back. And I also think there are millions of people that were married this morning that rolled over to the person next to them, and the person they're married to or they're in a relationship with, they feel does not have their back. And what happened is when we started doing our research on trust, we went on social media and we said this line. We said, a life without trust is blank. And we wanted to understand what would be the most common answer that people would fill in there. That a life without trust is this. Give me some guesses. What do you think the most common answer was? Okay, chaos. What else? A life without trust is chaos. It's also lonely, scary. Give me one more. Empty, unfulfilled. The most common answer that a life without trust is a really lonely place to be. And so how do you make sure that the way that we show up changes things? Listen, in my company, the Trust Architect Group, we have this core belief that your presence is a promise to people. A promise to be self-aware, a promise to be someone people can depend on, a promise to be someone that builds trust with other people. And I always say that your presence is either putting people at ease or it's putting them on edge. Those are your only two options. Now, if you heard Rachel from my bio, I studied body language from a lady in the FBI. That is how I started my career. And it wasn't just about how to read other people's body language. Yes, it's sexy. Everyone wants to learn what everyone else's body language is saying. But I think it's more important to say, do you know what your body language is saying? And do you know the promise that your presence makes even in this room with a group of people that you know? But what about the people you don't know? And so I'm going to give you your first test. If I asked you right now in the room, what is the most honest part of the body? What do you think that answer is based on your experience? And so you don't change your answer, I want you to lean over and tell the person beside you. Just tell them what you think it is. Y'all know I'm setting you up, okay? All right, raise your hand if you said the answer is face or eyes. Raise your hand. You are wrong, okay? So our entire life, we have been told, look people in the face and eyes. You all, we lie with our face and eyes the most. You have looked at someone this week and said, I love that outfit. You did not, okay? You have seen, if all of you that have kiddos, you have looked at your kiddo and been like, did you take that? And they're like, you know they took it, okay? We probably lie with our face and eyes the most. But it is not face and eyes. What other guesses do you got? Okay, you said posture, you said feet. What else? Hands, arms, shoulders, knees, and toes. I got it, okay? The answer is actually your feet. And so here's why. The further you get away from your brain, the less conscious you are of it. And so we are really good as adults. Remember I told you your presence is a promise? You all are real smart. You'll be in this meeting. You'll be looking at people and being like, But what happens is you're really aware of what's happening here. But the further down you get, the less conscious you are of it. And so what happens is your feet will always face the direction of your intention. I'm going to interview two people on stage later. We're going to find out who it is as we go. But when we get here, you're going to see just by the way that I show up will impact the dynamic of the conversation. And most people are clueless on what the promise is that their presence is actually sending to other people. But I want to tell you about a guy in like 90 seconds did something masterfully. So I was in Denver, Colorado, flying to Indianapolis to work at the NCAA. And y'all, you know what it's like when you're in the airport. People are kind of chilling by the gate, sleeping on their phone, whatever. And all of a sudden, the pilot comes off the plane, comes down the gateway, gets behind the podium, grabs the microphone, and he said, "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, if any of you are flying to Indianapolis today, can you please raise your hand?" Now, y'all know that's not normal, right? So all of a sudden, everyone stops what they're doing. They kind of look around, and you see the sea of hands go up. And he says, "Hello, my name's Captain Dave Tuck." And he goes, "I'm going to be your pilot today." And he goes, "One of the things the Air Force taught me when I was in it was how important it is to get everyone on the same page before you start a mission. So I wanted to come out here and get to know all of you before we take off today." And he told us about the weather. And he said, because of the weather, we might be 5 minutes late. We've checked everyone's connections. None of you all are going to miss it. He goes, regardless, we have enough gas to get to Antarctica. I'm like, that ain't funny at all, okay? And then he goes on, and this was my favorite part. At the very end, he said, hey, before you board the plane, he goes, I only have one rule for all of you today. He goes, my only rule is that you be kind to each other as you board. Because y'all know what it's like nowadays when they're like, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the boarding process. It is like a scene at the Hunger Games in the airport, okay? He knows how people treat each other. So he was like, just be kind to each other. He goes, our flight attendants are on board. They got the plane clean for you. And he goes, I can't wait to see all of you in Indianapolis. Y'all, I fly every week. It is the only time in an airport, all of a sudden, everyone around there started giving this man a roaring round of applause. And I was like, what did he just do in 90 seconds with his presence that I think so many of us don't do? He was really intentional about doing three things. I want you to know that you have to demonstrate all three to build trust. With your team, with your spouse, with your kiddos, doesn't matter. Here they are if you want to write them down. Number one is transparency. He was super transparent about his expectations, about what was going to happen today. Number two, he was super tactful in how we delivered the information. In fact, he was actually even a little bit humorous in it. And number three, and maybe even more importantly, was this idea of togetherness. He made us feel like it was all part of a team effort, that none of us were going in this alone. So, y'all, I'm a coach, so I'm about to challenge you. I'm gonna ask you in a second, out of those three, which one is your biggest opportunity? But let me give you some context. This is what I've seen happen a lot. So, the people that say transparency is their work, sometimes they bury their head in the sand in the sports bar and they don't have the conversation with the team members at the time that they should. So maybe they put it off. Or they're in meetings like this and they don't always speak up or share their thoughts and their feelings. Number two, tact. This is your ability to make people feel safe. So when you talked about safety, this is our ability to still tell people the truth, but take responsibility for how it lands. How many of you all have ever heard someone say this, where they're like, I'm just a truth teller. I just tell people how it is. Y'all heard that? Anytime someone tells you they're a truth teller, what are they telling you? They're a jerk, okay? Every time. Here's why, because what they've learned more than anything is, oh, I value transparency. I'm a truth teller. You're gonna know where I stand. But unfortunately, they don't always take responsibility for how it makes people feel on the other side. And the last thing is this idea of togetherness. It's this idea of, I know a lot of high performers who are great who do this. Just give it to me, I'll go do it myself. I'm gonna tell you from my experience, most high performers are not good team players because they go off and they do everything by themselves. And so what happens is this idea of, I know how to take people with me. I remember years ago, I was hiking in Hawaii. My favorite hike is Pololu Valley on the Big Island. And y'all, this hike is amazing. Going down, it was wonderful. I'm like saying hello to people. There's the ocean. I'm enjoying it. Coming up, whole different ballgame, everybody. It sucks, not gonna lie to you. And I just remember coming up the mountain, I literally put my head down. It was 1 foot in front of the other, just put 1 foot over the rock, over the thing. I stopped enjoying the view. I stopped saying hello to people. And I got to the top of that mountain and I sat there and I said, how many people make it all the way to the top in life, success, relationship, whatever? How many people make it all the way to the top, but then they're standing there all alone? There's a lot of people who are standing there at the top of success, standing there alone, and it's because they didn't know how to take people with them in the process. So let me ask you, out of those three, I want you to tell me, what would you say is your biggest opportunity for you? Now, here's the good news. If you're sitting with people you know, which I know you are, they already know the answer about you. They just don't tell you to your face, all right? So you're not going to surprise anyone, but I want you to lean over and I want you to tell them, out of those three, which one is your biggest opportunity and why do you believe that? Take 15 seconds. All right, how many of you in this room said, hey, I think transparency is my work? Raise your hand if it's transparency. Yeah. So I'm gonna give you some tips today, but there's a few of you. It's always usually the least in the room. How many, this is always the majority, by the way, usually. How many of you said it's tact? Raise your hand. It's us, I get it. Okay, I'm right there with you, it's mine as well. And how many of you said, hey, I think for me it's togetherness? Yeah, right? And if it's someone's like, I don't know, I think I'm all three. That's another program, y'all, okay? So I can't help you today. But I can help you with at least one of those in the time that we got. Now, listen, when I come to these conferences, I don't want to just give you my opinion. I always try to back it up with some science. So you're like, is this really true? So I want you to see this. This was MIT. And MIT came out during the pandemic, and they went on to Glassdoor, and they studied 1.3 million reviews. And if y'all don't know, Glassdoor is where anybody in your sports bar can leave a review, that an employee can leave a review of their own company. And so they studied 1.3 million negative reviews, and they wanted to understand the organizations, the companies, the sports bars, all these things that have the worst culture, what do they have in common? Here were the 5 characteristics. You have organizations that are acting unethical. So people are trying to keep stuff on the down low, hidden from each other. Number 2, there's non-inclusive. I don't feel like people like me fit in. I don't feel like people like me move up. And then the last 3 are they're disrespectful, cutthroat, and abusive. So I want you to think about what we just talked about with trust, that trust is built when you can do all 3. Transparency, tact, and togetherness. If you have an organization where people are acting unethical, it's because there's a lack of which one of those 3 trust elements. Which one's lacking the most? Transparency, right? So what happens is people aren't ethical, trying to keep stuff on the down low. There's a lack of transparency. If it's non-inclusive, then there's a lack of what? Togetherness. And the last 3, if they're disrespectful, cutthroat, and abusive, it's a lack of what? Tact. And this is why I will always say that trust is the antidote to every toxic workplace, I would say even relationship, all of that. Now, here's the deal before we get going into all this. Trust is not built in the hoping for, praying for, thinking about. Trust is built in the doing. And I know every one of you sitting here are like, why are we talking about it? You already know trust is important, because then I go into the sports bar and I'll tell you, I've already done some tours before I even came here so I could see what was the vibe when I go in. And why do I go into some of them and it's amazing and the vibe is incredible? And why do I go into some organizations and they know trust is important, but it is not alive and it is not happening? So what does it actually take to build trust? And so I want you to know, in my crazy world that we live in, we always say trust starts here. And what we mean by that is trust starts with you, right here, right now, and how you show up and the difference your presence makes. By the way, I'm gonna give you a body language thing just because you're doing it. Do you know, women, how does it make, this is not calling you out, it's okay, I'm gonna just show you, okay? Women, how does it make you feel when a guy's sitting beside you and does this? Be honest. How does it make you feel? Okay, not being heard. It's very intimidating. Here's why. Because it's called hooding like a cobra. When a cobra raises its hood, that's why they call it hooding. And what happens is it is as big as you can possibly get, unless you do this. No one does this. That's awkward, okay? So it's as big as you can possibly get. It's very confident and it's very intimidating to people. And so the only thing, just so you know how if someone ever did that to you, the one way you can get them to switch that position, if someone's doing this and they're sitting there, what can you do to take the power back? Stand up, because the moment you stand up, you will have a height advantage and they will often feel intimidated. And so understanding what signal does our presence, and I think so many people aren't even aware, so let's avoid that. So talking about what signal does our presence actually make to people. And so here's what I want you to know. When I say trust is built in, there's this idea that trust is built in yourself first. How many of you all have someone in your sports bar right now that you know lacks self-trust, that lacks confidence in themselves? Raise your hand if you know that person. Every one of you that raise your hand that have kiddos, one of our number one jobs is to help build their confidence. All those strategies in the middle are what's gonna help you be able to do that. Everything we just talked about, how do you build trust with others, is that outer realm. And then the last thing is this. We won't have time to go over all of it, but I want you to know that you cannot be in any long-term relationship with Inspire Brands, Buffalo Wild Wings, your marriage, it doesn't matter. You cannot be in a long-term relationship without eroding trust at some point. You are gonna disappoint each other. Somebody's gonna have a bad day. I'm gonna tell you, so many people in the sports bar, restaurant world that I work with, they say, I think I treat my own family better than I do my own family, or my work family better than I do my own family. And so part of it is, how do we repair trust once it's actually been broken? And so this is what we're gonna do today. I always say the best leaders I've ever met, they don't wait for trust to happen. They go out and they make the first move. So I'm gonna give you 6 moves that all of you can immediately apply in your marriage, in the sports bar, in any part of your life. And when we get done today, here in the next little bit, you're gonna tell me, out of these 6 moves I'm about to give you, is there just one that you're like, you know what? I think if I just did that one move a little bit more, it'd make a really big difference. So this is where we're gonna start. I want you to think about, do you think trust is given or do you think it is earned? I want your your thoughts based on your experience. Lean over and just tell the person beside you, do you think it's given or earned, and why do you think that? So here's what's interesting. You all probably heard it even in this room. It happens everywhere. The moment you ask people, do you think it's given or do you think it's earned? What is the most common answer you hear say out loud? Earned. And I'm like, gosh, who burned you along the way, okay? And listen, I'll tell you what the research says. I'll give you my opinion, but I'm gonna tell you, I think that answer is very dangerous. And here's why. Because if you want to find a reason not to trust people, you will always find it. And usually the people that say earned, they got burned at some point. They were like, nope, never again, never going there. And then they hold everyone at an arm's length distance and they never let people in anymore. Or it's really hard to kind of get in. And so it was one of my favorite leadership books comes from Colin Powell. And he said, anytime you take over a new team, your number one responsibility is to give complete trust to that team unless you have really credible reason not to. And he said, because watch what will happen. Almost every time you give trust to someone else, they almost always rise to the level of trust that you give them. But this idea of the research says it's not one or the other, it is actually both. And so we always say that trust is built. It's not given, it's not about just being earned. It's this dynamic of how do we make sure we do a little bit of both? But I'm gonna tell you why. I think did anybody say give in the room, by the way? Who said give? I'm gonna tell you, that is not a very common answer, and here's why I think people don't say it. Why is giving trust really hard? It's vulnerable. And why is it vulnerable? Yeah, someone's gonna step on stage here in a little bit. They don't know where it's gonna go. Someone's gonna say something to the executive team and you're like, is this gonna land well? Am I gonna have repercussions for it? Someone in your sports bar is gonna do something and they're gonna give a little bit of trust and they're like, are they gonna appreciate it here? It's risky because there is no guarantee that if I give a little bit of trust, what someone's gonna do with it. And so we always say this idea of, I would always, and it takes self-confidence to actually give trust to people. People that lack self-trust aren't gonna go out and give it because it's too risky to do it. So I gave you some examples on this slide. I wanted you to see what are some of the small ways that we actually give trust to people. Y'all, because trust is not built in the big moments. Trust is built in the really small moments of how we show up and treat each other. Can I tell you one of the things I love about you? I've only been to 2 organizations my entire career where every time someone was on stage, the audience actually stood up for everyone, not just for one person. And it's because what I know about your culture, I can already see it. You always make sure that everyone, no matter who it is, feels seen. That is one little way that you say we're giving trust to someone. It's having the tough conversation with somebody. It's seeing someone sitting out there during a break or during lunch today and they're by themselves and you're like, hey, come join us. It's these small moments of how we actually show up and treat each other. So here are just a few. So you invite someone to share something. Maybe there's someone in your sports bar, you're about to roll something out and you're like, hey, can I get your opinion on this? Now, do you necessarily maybe need their opinion? No, but that's part of togetherness is I'd love to get your insight on this. We thank people. We give people autonomy. We don't micromanage. We just kind of say, hey, we give direction and then we let them run with it. And then when we get it wrong, which we are going to get it wrong sometimes, do we apologize and try to make it right? So this is our philosophy at my company. We have this philosophy that says our job is to be first in, not all in, but first in. And what we mean is, but that is part of us giving trust. We're gonna be the first people to give you some feedback. We're gonna be the first person to recognize the heck out of you, which you're gonna see me do before I walk off the stage. We're gonna be the first person to give trust, and then we're gonna step back and we're gonna watch what do you do with the trust that we actually give you. And then based on that response, do they actually earn more of our trust? Now, I think it was half of you raised your hand a second ago and said, you have someone in your sports bar that needs to build more self-trust. I'm not gonna go through all 6 strategies, but I want you to see this slide, because whether it's your kiddo or it's someone in the sports bar, these are backed by science that we know that you can do. I'm gonna give you 3 that we know work. Number 1 is you speak up. What we know is your voice is directly connected to your confidence. So many people are like, oh, I'll speak up once I'm confident. I'm like, boo, it does not work that way. It just does not. You go have the tough conversation with your spouse about what you're not getting and what you need. Or you have the coaching conversation with the server that you've been putting off. And then what happens? You're like, okay, that didn't go so bad. I got through it. And you find a little bit more of your confidence every time. Number 2, I want to show the one that says honor who you are. This is about authenticity. Y'all, you've heard this. In leadership, we talk so much about authenticity, but I am not going to lie to you. I think authenticity is really hard. Why is authenticity hard? What'd you say? You got to be confident, but why? Because I want you to hear this. There is going to be someone even in this room that does not like the authentic version of you, and you have to get okay with it. Can I tell you, Joseph, where are you, brother? Is he here right now, or did he walk out? So I'm going to tell you, when I was thinking about Joseph, there will always be people that I think when he's like, woo, and I was laughing about it, and I was like, I'm so proud of him, but there will always be people that think that he's too much. And I always say, if those people think you're too much, those are not your people. And I heard a great quote one time that said, yeah. And there was a great quote that I wanted Joseph to hear, so somebody's going to tell Joseph later. It said, this person said, you are not too much, you are everything. And I think that's what I meant, is this idea of that you've got to be so okay that this is me and I'm right for the people that I'm right for. And that is hard because there are rewards and consequences with that. And here's the last one. I love this one. The one in purple says, go on a vice detox. And this is the idea. If someone lacks confidence in your sports bar, I'm going to tell you they're going to do this every time. When they need to make a decision, they're going to come to you, and what are they going to ask you? What do you think I should do? And the reason they always do it is because they have outsourced their decision making to everyone else in life. They don't even trust themselves. And part of our job is to help them find their voice. And what does your intuition say? So the first strategy I want to give all of you, if you're writing on the handout on the back, it says the first move that any of you can make is to say, be first in. So for all of you that raised your hand and said, hey, I think you got to earn trust first, my challenge is, can you walk out of this room today and say, I'm just going to try to do a little bit more about being first in and give a little more. Maybe with your spouse, your kiddos, or even with the people in the sports bar. Number 2, when we talk about if trust is your biggest competitive advantage, then silence is your biggest threat. Y'all, why do you think that's true? Why would silence be your biggest threat in any relationship, personally or professionally? What do you think? Say that again? Yeah, so you said silence is acceptance. Give me one more answer. What else do you think? Yeah, you can't fix what you don't talk about. Brene Brown, you all, famous leadership person, probably the world's most famous right now, her and Simon Sinek. And I went through one of her courses once and she said this. She says, when people don't have all the information, they fill it in with fear. I want you to hear that. When people don't have all the information, they fill it in with fear. And usually that truth is so much worse than the actual answer really is. I was coaching an executive, y'all, and he said to me during the middle of my coaching, he goes, I don't open up a lot to my wife because he goes, I don't want to burden her with it. And in his mind, he was really doing a good thing. He's like, I don't want her to have to deal with this. But here's the problem with that. I looked at him and I go, you realize that's rooted in control, right? You never gave her the option to deal with it. You made the choice for her. And what happens is he goes home. She knows him well enough to know something's going on. And he's like, oh, no, I'm fine. And he leaves the room to go deal with it by himself. And now she's standing there, start making up stories about what's going on, having to deal with it by herself. So now everyone's in their home dealing with everything by themselves. And so what happens is there are 3 reasons why I think people stay really silent in relationships. Number 1 is this idea that they just lack confidence. They don't really have the self-trust to speak up for themselves. Number 2 is what I see the most often. There's a climate of fear, which you all talked about, where they're not going to do it. And number 3 is the one we should all be worried about, especially in our relationships. This idea that I feel like I've tried to speak up several times and the person just doesn't care and they shut me down. So it's just not even worth my time and energy anymore. So we stop sharing and we stop giving our ideas to other people. So I want you to hear this. How many of you all said transparency is your work? Raise your hand if that was you. There's about 10 or 15 of you. I'm gonna give you a strategy in just a second that I'm gonna really try to have you hone in on. I always say all people can handle the truth. What they can't handle is silence and secret. That's what destroys every relationship. So here's the tactic for all of you that said transparency is your work. If you've ever seen research on icebergs, how much of an iceberg do they say is actually underwater? They say like 80 to 90. It's the majority of an iceberg is underwater. Y'all, I find the same to be true with how we actually communicate. What is on top of the water is usually what we share with people. Here's the decision we made as an executive team. But underneath the water is where trust is built. And so many teams don't actually go there. It's why we made the decision. It's the reason, it's the emotions that came up. Can I tell you what I loved yesterday? So I stayed for the whole thing yesterday. I was like, I'm gonna go watch how the leadership team and all these speakers, how you all interact. And one of the things I loved during the panel yesterday was how honest you all were asking questions and how honest the leadership team was getting below the waterline to say, you might not love all the answers, but we're going to keep it real with you so that we can take you with us. And so part of that is their ability to build trust with you. I've worked with a lot of companies who don't do that. And so part of it is you don't have to, so you're even at your sports bar, they don't have to like the answer, but I'm not gonna blindside you. Trust never leaves people second guessing. Let me give you a quick story. Have a leader who did this like magnificently. I was working with the Solar Energy Industry Association during COVID, and y'all, early on, the CEO, her name is Abby, she thought it was gonna be pretty bad. So she brings her entire team together, an entire organization, and she said, now get under the water. So where your emotions, what your beliefs are, she said to them, I'm a little nervous. I think this could be really bad for our business, and I don't know what's gonna happen. She said, but this is my commitment to every one of you here. I will not blindside you by the decisions we're gonna make as an organization. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna get together every Friday, and I'm gonna inform you on the decisions that the executive team is talking about. She said, you might not like every decision that we're gonna make, but I will never blindside any of you in this organization with those decisions. Eventually, they had to lay off 7 people. They had to cut all 401k matching during the pandemic. They had to cut all executive pay by 25%, and they cut all employee pay by 10 or 15. They did that just to survive as a company. Then COVID, we get on the other side. I go back and I was like, what, they reinstated everything. And then I was like, what happened to the culture because of how transparent she was? Every person I talked to said the trust in that company today is better than it ever was before. They didn't love all the decisions, but they never felt blindsided by the decisions that were happening. And I think that's the key. So for everyone that said transparency is your work, my challenge to you is, can you always show your why in the conversation? Whether with your partner, about, hey, this is what I'm feeling in our relationship, this is what I need, whether with your kiddos. How many times, if y'all are a parent, we have all done this, if you're a parent and they ask you, can I go do something? And you say what? Nope. And then what does your kid always say? Why? And then you as parents have this classic answer. What do you say? Because I said so. Could you imagine if you went to your boss and said, hey, your district manager, I want a raise, and they're like, no, and they're like, well, why? And they said, because I said so. That would not sit well with any of you. And so part of it is, you don't have to like the answer, but I owe it to the relationship to try to explain it to you, all right? So number 2 is show your why. Now, number 3, this is interesting. This is not my research. It came from the Harvard Business Review. They asked leaders just like you, as a leader, is it better to be loved or is it better to be feared? Now, let me tell you how they define it, and then I'm gonna ask you what you think. They said love was defined as a leader who uses empathy and warmth of their presence to get results, where the other side is leaders that use fear, rely on their smarts, their competence, and their confidence in their presence, their strength to get results. So based on your experience, do you think it is better to be loved or do you think it's better to be feared? Share it with the person beside you. All right, we're gonna talk about, now I'm not gonna lie to you. The other region threw me for a loop when I asked this question, all right? I don't know if I set it up wrong, what happened, but I was kind of taken back. So overall, what would you all think the answer is? Okay, the answer, I'm gonna give you the research and then I'll tell you my opinion. The research says they are both important, but one has to come before the other. Which has to come first? The answer was love. And what they meant is this idea is if you want to create a sports bar or any type of culture where trust is happening, you cannot do it out of fear. It always has to be this place of connection. So the answer, and then listen, this is only my opinion, nothing to back it up, might offend somebody in the room, but I want you to know where I stand. I actually think fear takes no talent. I want you to hear it. Leading out of fear takes no talent. Anybody can do it. You could go back to your sports bar right now and you can lead out of fear and it will work. Why will it work? What'd you say? Intimidation. They need jobs. They need paychecks. They need to take care of their kiddos. You're going to get it. You might get compliance, but you will never get commitment from people. And then all of a sudden, what changes things is when we start leading from this other place. So I do think they're both important, but how we start to lead makes a really big difference. Y'all, here was the most honest question I've ever been asked in a room like this. There was a guy right here in the middle, and all of a sudden, he raises his hand, and he goes, all right. He goes, I get all this. But he goes, if everything you're saying is actually true, then why do so many jerks make it to the top of organizations? And I'm not gonna lie, he's right. And I want you to hear me. There is only one reason why, not saying here, in other organizations, why so many people that don't live what we're talking about make it to the top. Why do you think they make it to the top? There's only one reason. Okay, so maybe people don't tell them not to. What is it? Connection, the connections they have maybe within the company. You're maybe onto something. What else? They do get results. And here's what happens. If the company only values results and not how people get the results, they will always reward bad behavior every time. And so what happens is you get people leading the company that only care about numbers and not how people got the numbers, and then they start hiring more people like themselves and start promoting. Then you lose the culture. And so that's what I love. It's obviously not happening here, but I want you to know why it happens so often. I'm a big believer listen, any company, we're all about results. Even in my company, you got to perform, but how you perform makes a really big difference. Google, you all, by the way, they did a study. For years, they were trying to understand what do the highest performing teams at Google do differently than every other team. They studied it for multiple years. People hanging outside of work together, people, education level. After years of studying, the only thing they could find that was different were the teams that outperformed every other team had psychological safety on them where every other team did not. That was it. Now, all my parents, I know you raised your hand. I'm going to invite you to get your camera out. I want you to take a picture of the next slide. I want you to have this in your camera roll and I'll explain why in a second. You don't have to, but if you're a parent, I'm going to really challenge you to do that. Here's why. Every parent that I have ever talked to, coached in my life, is always like, I wish my kiddos would open up more to me. I'm going to tell you, the only reason your kids don't open up is because of this. It only takes once or twice of us not showing up the way that we should for their little brains to say, never again, can't go to mom or dad. And so psychological safety is the idea that if I come to you, I will not be shamed, judged, criticized, or humiliated. That's it. Someone in the sports bar, they might have an idea, or they might not like the way something's going. If they come to you as the general manager, do they feel like if I come to you, I won't be shamed, judged, criticized, or humiliated? It's not always easy because sometimes we are not going to agree with what they did, all of that. And so this is where I was telling you all that I think trust is not always comfortable, but it should always be safe. So let me give you an example. Let me bring it back to your world in leadership. There's a term called your emotional wake. Y'all say yes if you agree that everywhere you go, you leave an emotional imprint on people. Can we get down with that? Yes, everywhere. The bank, the grocery store, your sports bar, everywhere. So think about it. If we all got on a boat together today and we start heading this way in the boat, what happens to the wake behind the boat the further out we get? It gets bigger, right? So what happens is you and I are going to have an interaction today which starts out really small, or someone comes to your sports bar, they have a small interaction with the server, and then they leave your sports bar, and what do they go do now? They tell someone else. Or more dangerously or amazingly, they get on social media, and what starts out small gets really big very quickly. I'm going to tell you about when I got it wrong. I am not proud of this moment, but I want you to see the consequences sometimes of what happens. So I remember Years ago, I was in the Toronto airport. Y'all, it was like 5 in the morning. It was early. I got through that little x-ray machine, and I go over here to that little conveyor belt where everyone's bags are in the bin, and there's a TSA agent checking a man's bag so no one's bags could come out. So I stand back and I wait patiently for the TSA agent to get done. And when she gets done, she hands the man his backpack, and I walk over there and I go to slide all the bins down so the bins could start moving. I don't know what that did to the TSA agent, but when I went to go slide them down, she grabs the last one, like throws her hand down on the last one so that I couldn't move the rest of them. And in my Kentucky Southern passive-aggressive way, I jerked my head up and I was like, bless her heart. No, she did not just do that to me, okay? And for all of you laughing, you're my people because you know what bless your heart means, okay? And without thinking about it, I am not proud of this. Without thinking about it, I walked over there, I stacked every bin on top of another, and then I slid the last bin down and I said, fine, I'll do your job for you. That did not go well with TSA. Do not do that, okay? And all of a sudden, she and I start getting into it in the middle of the Toronto airport, and I finally took my backpack and I took 20 steps down the terminal and I stopped. It's one of the only times in my career, like I stop and all these people are going by me, and all I can think about is, I teach people for a living to take responsibility for their energy, and I didn't. So now I have a choice to make. I'm telling you, because you're gonna walk out of that door a little bit here in a little bit, and this afternoon, and you're gonna go back home, and you're gonna get it wrong at some point. And when you get it wrong, you're gonna have a choice to make. So I'm standing there, I was like, I know how I am. I'll either obsess about it and be like, I shouldn't have done that, or I'm gonna go take responsibility for my part in the dysfunction. I still to today do not agree with how that woman acted, but I realized it wasn't about her. I didn't show up my best. So right or wrong, I start making my way back to TSA, okay? You know it's not gonna go well, okay? So here we go. I go back to TSA. I am not being dramatic. This is exactly how it goes down. She's turned around talking to her coworker. I said, excuse me, ma'am. And in slow motion, she turns her head and she goes, what? Like this, okay? I knew it was gonna be good when she did the neck thing, okay? So I said, I need to tell you that I'm sorry. You did not deserve the way that I talked to you, and I owe you an apology. And she looks at me and she goes, well, I don't accept your apology. Now, y'all know what I was thinking, right? Okay? I was thinking bless her heart still, okay? But I had it together at this point, and I just said, ma'am, you don't have to accept that, but I just feel like I owe that to you, and I want to let you know. And I go, I hope you have a good day. And without missing a beat, she looks at me and she goes, well, I hope you have a bad one. And she walks away, and I was like, who does that to people, okay? But it taught me a really important lesson, is this idea of sometimes our heat in conversations, I don't care if it's the sports bar, in our partnerships, sometimes our heat gets the best of us. And there is one tactic that I can teach all of you that I know will make a big difference. It's this one. Every one of you have teams back in your sports bar. If you do one exercise with your team, it should be this one. So to show you how to do it, I'm gonna need one volunteer that I can ask you 2 questions that everyone can do back in their sports bar. Here's the deal. I will always make you look like a star in front of your people. I will always make you look good. I will never embarrass you. So you don't have to worry about that. But I need to ask you 2 questions so that people in the room know how to do it. All right, come on up here. They're going to bring me a microphone. Everybody give him some love. Let's see. Whoever it was. All right. Somebody raised their hand. I don't know who it was. Come on up here. All right. So here's what we're going to do. So in a second, I'm going to ask 2 questions. These are the 2 questions. If you have a team meeting, these are the 2 questions that I think you should probably use in your next meeting with your servers, your bartender, that you can do. All right, is it Anthony?
Yes, sir.
Nice to meet you, Anthony. All right, it'll come on in just a sec. Is it good?
Hello. Hey.
Perfect. So Anthony, I'm gonna ask you, first question is, I'm gonna give you a bunch of time to think about it. I'll give them some examples. What is one moment in your life where you are really proud of how you were able to show up in that moment? Now I'm gonna give you a bunch of examples, okay? One moment when you look back on your life, you're like, you know what? I'm proud of how I showed up in that moment. Here's the deal. Most people will ask you right now, do you mean personally or do you mean professionally? And what do you think I would say? It shouldn't matter. Thank you for saying that. Why should it not matter? Because authenticity is being the same person in every room. We don't wear masks. I don't wear a mask to church and a mask in the sports bar and a mask in my marriage. It's can you be the same person in all those spaces? So I don't care if it's personally, professionally. I've had people stand on the stage and said, reading a bedtime story to my kiddo. I had other people talk about getting on stage and delivering a presentation they prepared for. They were super nervous, but they got through it. I've had two men at Ford Motor Company stand on this stage. Worst person I think a parent would ever go through, worst experience. They both talked about losing their kid and how in the lowest point of their life that they were still proud of how they were able to show up for themselves and their family. It doesn't have to be sad. It could be the other side. It could be winning an award. It could be anything. Here's the only thing I don't want you to do. When they say, what's one specific moment, don't be like, my 20s. That is too general, okay? So they need a very specific moment. So what's one moment, Anthony, when you look back on your life, you're like, you know what? I'm proud of myself for how I showed up in that moment.
Any time that I'm tired, I've had a long day, and I'm still needed somewhere, I still show up. Yeah. So I guess if you're thinking specifically, one time that really stands out is everybody knows about Uvalde and Boys and Girls Club, and we showed up. And it didn't matter that I closed the night before, got up early, made food, and took it to those kids. They were happy to see us, and it was for the right thing.
I love it. First, give him some love, first of all. Stay here. And it's nice to have a marching band with you, isn't it? Yeah. So here's what I would tell you. The second question that you have to ask is this. This is the most important part. Is what are the top 3 actions that you demonstrate out of all the actions you're demonstrating, the 3 most important that allow you to always show up your best? The reason why they need to have a memory is because they're going to try to tell you who they want to be. But when they have to anchor it to a memory with what you just said to us, right? You said, in that moment, I know one of them already was you're present for people. You show up, you're present. But what are the 2 other ones? When you're really at your best, it could be, I'm making these up, don't let me bias you. It could be, I'm empathetic. It could be that I'm confident. It could be that I'm funny. It could be anything. The words are going to be different for everyone in this room. So for you, what were the top 3 actions that when you're at your best, you know you demonstrate?
I would say love is one.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for me, and I was raised, when you care about others more than you do yourself, that's being a real friend.
Yeah.
Secondly, you did take one, empathy.
Yeah.
Showing love for others and caring about them and how they feel. But also, a lot of that comes from friendship and wanting to be that friend for other people, even if they don't know you.
So here's why what he just did is really important. Here's what he said to all of you. When Anthony is really at his best, he is present for people, he is empathetic, and he is friendly. Does that feel genuine and authentic to who you are?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now, that's the exercise I want you to do. Now I'm gonna have you to challenge them. What's maybe the cost of people in the sports bar not knowing who they are when they're really at their best, or not knowing their top 3 words?
They don't feel confident. So, if they're walking in that day and I say hello to everybody just because that's important to me. Someone was always saying hello to me. So I want to make them feel welcomed, no matter if they're a guest or even a team member. And it's really important that they feel welcome, that they feel like they're at their second home, not just at work.
Yeah, here's why it's also important. I don't know how many of you on your sports bar do this. They're like, well, I'm just doing the best I can. And I literally look at them and I say, based on what? What's the vision you're actually holding yourself accountable to? And what happens is, I don't want to coach you to be someone you're not. I want to coach you to be more of who you say you are when you're at your best. And that's going to be different for everyone in the sports bar. But Anthony, as your general manager, so as a general manager, to be able to say, when I'm at my best in that sports bar, I am empathetic, I am present for people, and I'm friendly. But I'm going to tell you, there are going to be moments, I don't know when the rush is happening or things are going on, you're going to realize, oh no, I'm not in that zone right now.
And I run to the cooler.
Yeah, right? Yeah, right? You're like, y'all like, the cooler is our space to get it back together, all right?
All right.
But what happens is, the reason why I appreciate even that answer is, same for me in Toronto. I took 20 steps over in the terminal and I stopped because I know at my best, I'm empathetic, present, and I'm confident. And I said, wow. I didn't live what I say I stand for. And my job is to get back to that version of myself. And so, can I ask you one final question? What would be the benefit of every GM in this room using this exercise with their team? How do you talked yesterday about the WINGS acronym and delivering friendly service. How would this exercise help you all deliver more of that promise and that rally cry?
It makes everybody feel welcome. You know, whenever you love others and you give more than what you receive, you really take in more enjoyment in your life. And I know that just applies to me and how I feel. But I know each one of us has a story that we could tell that we could all take back from each other. And that's why I appreciate us being able to come together like this, because we can network in that way. We can talk to each other. What works for you may not work for me, but, you know, it applies in many different ways.
Everybody give Anthony some love. I'm proud of you, brother. I'm gonna give you a book. Hold on one second. There you go, brother. Appreciate you. All right. So here's what I want you to do. Number 3 is I want you to be able to check your heat. How many people in the room, how many of y'all said tact was your work? I know it was the majority of you. If you said tact is your work, this exercise, y'all, I can't tell you, that's the exercise for you. It's gonna help you more than anything else. Now, number 4, y'all, this is one of my favorite things. I think it was Tony Robbins who were studying couples that were married for long periods of time and that were happy. Now, y'all, that's the kicker, because you can be married and miserable. And he said, what do the couples that are together and happy for long periods of time, what do they do differently than every other couple? They could only find one factor. So I'm gonna have you try something. In 30 seconds, I want your table to try to come up with one answer you unanimously agree on. What is the one factor that kept couples together and happy for long periods of time? And then I'm gonna call on you really quickly. Get one answer, 30 seconds. All right, so here we go. Now listen, y'all, I've heard about every answer you can say. You are not gonna say, I've heard like people are like, time away from each other, you name it, I've heard it, okay? So we're gonna go really quickly. If your table has a different answer, all the way in the back, if you said, hey, this is what kept couples together and happy, what do you got? So communicating really well. Back table, what you got? So being each other's friend, best friend, what you got over here? Okay, never stop dating. We're gonna talk a little bit about it. Yeah, but you know what? We do stop dating, because then what happens is we get busy being busy, and couples get busy in their careers. They get busy raising their children. And what happens, unfortunately, for most is the thing that brought them together, they stop doing, which is gonna be part of the answer, which you'll see. What else do you think it is? You make people laugh. You said you spend time together. Anything else that was different from your table? You said, I know I'm teaching trust. That is not the answer, but it is going to come back to it, okay? This is what will lead to trust. What else? Understanding, and one more. Appreciation. Here's where it is. They said the one thing they did differently than every other couple was they kept giving to each other where every other couple had stopped. And so even when you said they kept dating, they kept giving. And so this is what I think about. Think about it, y'all. I know it's been a while for some of y'all, but when you first got together, your job was to make that person feel sexy, valued, and special. What were some of the really small things that you did to make someone feel special? When it gets this quiet, I know it's been a while for some of y'all, okay? So what were some of the small things that you did to make that person feel special? What'd you say? Yo, you gave a foot massage. Good for you, okay? When was the last time you did that? Many years ago, okay? Yeah. Can I tell, I'm not laughing. Here's why. When I was at Ford Motor Company, the guy in the middle, he goes, I used to open the car door. And I go, how long's it been? He goes, 14 years, okay? And he was like, okay, maybe you just open it every once in a while now, right? What other little things did we do? We bought flowers. We wrote messages to each other. Give me like one more. What'd you say? Say it again. Yeah, like a good day text or kind of this note, right? Here's why what you're saying is really important. Every one of you can apply this immediately. I'm gonna give you some science and I'll give you a tactic. Stephen Covey, famous leadership guy, he says every relationship in your life, there is a bank account of trust between you and that other person. That's it. And you're either putting deposits into that bank account or you are taking them out. Those are our only two options we got. And so here's what's interesting about that research. As general managers, how are we putting those deposits even yes, even at home, but even with the people that are in the sports bar? Let me tell you why that's important. Dr. John Gottman is the world's most renowned person in relationships, and all their research says for every one negative thing that happens, you have to have 5 to counteract it. So here's what's interesting. You're gonna go to the sports bar one day, and you're gonna have to have a tough conversation with someone at some point. You better have done the work before that conversation, so there's already trust built. So now they trust your intentions. They know that you're not just coming for them. And so have we done that work? All relationships end. I want you to hear this. If you hear nothing else, all relationships end when people become emotionally bankrupt. That's it. It's why people get divorced. One partner takes more out of the relationship than they're putting in, and finally one person will finally say enough is enough. I'm gonna go start a bank account by myself, or I'll go start it with someone else over here. This is why we fire people from companies. You might look at someone in the sports bar and say, we have put more into you than we are getting back out of you, so it's time we start a relationship with someone else, a new team member. Or Inspire Brands, Buffalo Wild Wings could eventually say, you know what, we poured more into this person than we're getting back, it's time to part ways. All relationships end, all of them, when people become emotionally bankrupt. So here's the tactic. This idea is I really want you to make some emotional trust deposits with people. Y'all, these are some easy things. Now, if you want to download this QR code, it doesn't ask you for information. All you got to do is it's going to pull up a handout. If people are like, I'm going to do this work, I created 28 days of prompts, easy things that all of you as GMs can do 2 minutes a day. And like you said, maybe it's sending a text message to someone on the team. Maybe one of the last ones, they start out really easy and they get harder as you go to the 28 days. Like around day 26, one of them is, if you're in a meeting or you're talking to your DM, do you shout out someone else on the team that isn't in the room? So you're starting to make people lift other people up that maybe aren't in the spaces yet, that the rooms that they're in. So these are some just examples I wanted you to talk about. How can you actually create some of these trust deposits? Now, I'm not gonna have you do this exercise, but I'm gonna show it to you. This next slide is we typically ask people to send a text message. How many of you all, anybody bring, I know a lot of you drove here at this one. Did anybody bring their spouse to the hotel or do anything, or a partner here? I know some of the groups from the last group, there's a couple of you. Here's what I would say. So for everyone else, this is your challenge. So I'm gonna challenge you to send a text message after you leave this room for the break, and I want you to send a little trust deposit, either to someone in your personal life or send it to someone on your team. Here's some examples of what you can say. Hey, just had a quick break, can't wait to see you when I get home tonight. Or, hey, love you, be home soon. Or, hey, you know what? I know I was out of the sports bars for a couple days. Thanks for holding things down while I was gone. You are gonna learn a lot about yourself based on the answer. Because if they're like, what'd you do? What's wrong? Okay? What are they probably telling you in that moment? You don't do it very well. And so I think the answer is really good feedback for us is, am I in the habit of creating these deposits, or have I gotten out of the habit? So number 4 is I want you to make really consistent trust deposits as you go, all right? So can you make these consistent trust deposits? Now, I'm gonna ask for one more volunteer, which is gonna be like one of the most important exercises we're gonna do, all right? So here's what we're gonna talk about. I'm a big believer that we talk about empathy, and I don't want you just to hear me talk about it. I want you to witness it in real time and how the way that you show up will change the dynamic between two people. Empathy is not putting yourself in someone else's shoes. That is impossible. It is looking at someone, and when you're someone in your sports bar is going through something, or even one of the guests come in, can you validate their experience? So I want you to watch in real time what's gonna happen here, and you're gonna tell me what you notice. So I need one more volunteer who doesn't, come on up here, everybody give him some love, okay? All right, so this is what we're gonna do. So you're gonna watch, here's 2 things I want you to watch for. I want you to watch my body language, and you're gonna tell me when it's over what you notice. Is it Robert? Robert, nice to meet you, brother. So you're gonna sit in that seat. So you're all gonna watch my body language, and then when we're done, tell me what you noticed, and then listen to the words, because there's gonna be something I'm gonna do with my words that all of you can do via text message or actually in person, all right? So here's what we're gonna start. So Robert, I want you to think about someone in your life that you admire more than anyone else. Like, who's that person for you?
My boss, Barbie.
Yeah, and maybe some of them know her, but from people like me who don't know Barbie, what about her, that person makes them so darn special?
The way she connects with people, and she sees you, and she values your opinion, and she's a great leader.
Yeah. And even as you talk about it feels like there's this sense of just pride and respect that you have, knowing that you probably worked for leaders who did not show up that way, and to be with someone who makes you feel seen and respected is pretty refreshing.
It is.
Yeah. Number 2, take me back to kind of the pandemic. What was the hardest part for you and your family that maybe you had to experience that no one in this room would know y'all had to go through?
Well, the hardest thing that really was the fact that we couldn't be with each other as much as we wanted to because, you know, we were still open and we were still, you know, with the public and everything. So I wouldn't come home and have direct contact with them and everything. I would stay in a separate room while they were together and everything. So it was a little hard.
Yeah, and it's pretty isolating to the people that you love the most. You can't interact with as much, and there was no guarantee of when that was going to end, and that's a little overwhelming sometimes. Yeah. What is something that you carry around that really shaped who you are that you don't share with a lot with other people?
Well, a while back when my father passed away, I felt like he died way too soon, and it really shook my faith, and it made me cold and callous, and it made me very abrasive to other people, and it made me go, what's the point if, you know, people that you love leave so soon and you still have so much more to learn from them? Because my father was a carpenter and we worked together, and honestly, the restaurant business wasn't my first choice. It was working with him until I learned enough to take over the family business and build houses and so on and so forth and everything. Lucky enough for me, I was, you know, good enough at talking with the public and, you know, being who I was, that I was able to adapt to something else. But this was not my main focus. You know, my first job was with Shoney's, and they said, oh man, you're great at doing this and everything, but my heart was with what me and my dad was doing. So, you know, when he passed away, I had to pivot, and I gravitated towards the restaurant field.
Yeah, and I think it can be disheartening to lose someone that you love and respect so much, and it's normal to start questioning everything until you get a sense of kind of what feels right, and sometimes that takes a little bit of time. Everybody give him some love, first of all. Thank you. I want you to watch a couple things. In body language, there are 4 gestures that create empathy. Now, would you all agree there's a time to be confident and powerful, and then there's a time to be empathetic and collaborative, right? This empathy looks completely different. I told you the most honest part of the body, what is it? It's your feet. So, Robert, I could have looked at you like this. I'm looking at you with my face and eyes. Does this energy feel different than when I turn and talk to you like this?
Different.
Of course it does. So number 1 is I point my feet directly to the person I'm talking to. Number 2, what else do y'all notice? Okay, let me say this, eye contact. It's going to be different in this room. Out of 100% of eye contact, how much should you consistently maintain with someone? What do you think? 60%. Someone said 60, 40, okay. Any other guesses? 9, stop it, it's creepy, no one likes it, okay? The research says anything above 80 is actually considered what? They don't use the word creepy in research, but they say intimidation, because if you can tell that Robert needs a moment, what should I purposely do with my eye contact to make him feel safe? I break it on purpose. Our whole life, look people in the face and eyes. The research says maintain between 60 and 70%, and it's okay to break it, to give him a moment to think about and re-engage. I also lean in. Body language is not about what you want it to mean, it's about perception. So when I lean in, what's the perception?
You're
that I care, that I'm here, right? And here's the last one. Is there anything else that you noticed? I try to do it at least once. I nod my head. Here's why. Men, I don't talk about gender differences very much, but this is it. Most men only look straight forward, and the only time they nod is when what? When they agree. They're like, yep, let's move on. This is confidence. What I just tried to demonstrate here is the exact opposite. So only men answer this. Men, when you're talking to a woman and she slowly tilts and nods her head, men, how do you interpret that? Look, you see how quiet it got? So I'm going to help some of y'all not get divorced. Here we go, okay? So this does not mean agreement. If it's fast, it means you better hurry it up, okay? But this slow tilt nod head thing, this is empathy. And here's the most important thing that I just did with Robert. I want you to see the words that I used. There's a formula that says, of course you feel, and then you insert the emotion you think Robert was experiencing. because, and then you have to go deeper than Robert just said. Watch what I just did. Robert talked about his boss, Barbie, right?
Yes.
And so I said, I can see the sense of respect. That's the emotion that you have when you talk about her, probably because you've worked with other people who didn't treat you that way, and it's so refreshing when you've been with somebody who does. And when I did that, what was his answer when I got done? He said yes. And then I asked about the pandemic, and I said, it was probably isolating to love these people as much as you do, but have to go home and not really be able to interact with them like you wanted, and that can be overwhelming. And what did he say when I was done? He said yes. Anytime someone says yes to you, what are they telling you? They're telling you see me. And so I want you to know, we have, if I could give you one tactic that I think will help you in the sports bar more than anything else, we use a tactic that we say put empathy before information. When someone comes to you with some emotion, it doesn't matter if it's amazing or if it's really negative, before I try to give you my opinion or try to fix it for you, I always say people don't need to be fixed, they need to be heard. The first thing we need to do is use this formula. Please, when you walk out of here, don't be like, you do not have to start with, of course you feel. Please do not do that. You can start however you want. But he's like, well, I get why you're overwhelmed, right? And then you go a little bit deeper. So I'll end with this. This is my favorite quote of all time. And Robert, you kind of hinted on it. It came from Oprah. She said, everyone in life just wants to know three things. They want to know, do you see me? Do you hear me? And does what I say mean anything to you at all? And I want to say, I think it takes a lot of courage to get in front of your peers, some that you know and some that you don't know, and share a little bit of your heart, share a little bit of your insight. But I think it's people like you that have the courage to do this that makes Buffalo Wild Wings a better place. And I know if you're doing it here, you're also doing it back in your sports bar, and it makes a really big difference. Everybody give him some love. I'm proud of you, brother. Let me give you a book. Hold on one second. Oh, they cut you. There you go, brother. Proud of you. Good job. All right, there you go. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna bring this home with a couple things. Let me give you one more chair, Megan. Everybody, can we give Megan some love over here? She's been working hard. Appreciate you. All right. So, last thing is, I always say this fifth technique is to lead with empathy. So this idea of, I want you to think about putting empathy first in how you communicate. So can you just lead with empathy? Now, I know every one of you walked in here and you saw on your table all these little ducks. I want you to, you're never gonna unsee what I'm about to show you. Do we have any Jeep owners in the room, by the way? Okay, I'm a Jeep Wrangler owner as well, so I'm with you, you're my peeps. Everyone else, you're never gonna unsee what I'm about to share with you. If you ever see a Jeep driving down the street, what will you see on every Jeep in the front of the dashboard? You see ducks. Now, not my Jeep people. Everyone else, do you know why all Jeep owners have ducks? Anybody that's not a Jeep owner know why? What is it? Yeah, well, here's why. Because there was a lady in Canada who was having a bad day, and she was like, I want to change people's mood, and I want to try to create a positive impact on people. So she was a Jeep owner. She started leaving ducks on the door handle of other Jeep owners to say, I'm really glad you're part of the community. And what happened is it went viral. And so now as Jeep owners, we all have ducks in our Jeep, and anywhere you go, when if I'm at a mall or B-dubs, or if I'm at the airport, oftentimes I come back and on the door handle of my Jeep will be another duck from another Jeep owner to say, I'm really glad you're part of our community. It's a way for us to make each other feel seen. And so here's my challenge. The one thing I know about this company is you all already do this pretty well, but my challenge is please do not give that duck to your kid. If you need another one, I will give you another one before you walk out of here. But what I want you to do is I would love for you to put it somewhere in your office or somewhere where you're gonna see it every day as a reminder, did you make someone feel seen today? And so you all, this is all the research on recognition. I'm not gonna go through it all. You can see this. There is so much research on what recognition does. I'm telling you, if you want people to get along better, if you want people to perform better, recognition is the single most important thing that we can all do in the sports bar. It's the easiest thing you can do. I'm gonna give you a couple examples. You don't need to see my story. This was my story about when I was actually at Yum Brands. They were known for recognition. I think this is more important. One of the things I created for all of you, you don't have to use this, but one of the things we do in my company is we have a personalized recognition form. So for every employee, we ask them their favorite things. What's your favorite candy bar? What's your favorite local restaurant? What's your favorite thing? So that when the time comes for us to recognize the people that work for us, we actually have this entire list of things that they actually care about. about. So I put this up there. It's the same QR code as the other one. So if you're going to be able to flip between the documents and you can download either one. But I want you to see the things that you can use even back in your own sports bar to kind of create that culture. I want to show you one team member though. I got the chance to go into B-Dubs a few times in Louisville, Kentucky before I came here. I was like, I want to incognito. They don't know I'm going to be the speaker. And I was like, I want to see what the vibe is really like. This is one of your servers. Her name is Danielle. And when I'm going to tell you, when I talked about using your presence to make people feel seen, y'all, this person, she's amazing. The moment I walked in, she lit up, she invited us to sit down, and I brought my sister with me just so we were hanging out. And my sister, when Danielle came to take our order, we sat down, and my sister didn't know what she wanted. So Danielle's like, well, can I sit down with you and we'll go over it together? And so my sister slid down and Danielle sat beside her and started talking about the menu and her favorite items. And then just the way that Danielle showed up, my sister still to today talks about the moment that server left on her in the impression. And when I talk about trust is what keeps people coming back, it was something so small and so easy for someone to do like Danielle that made a really big difference. And so I obviously yesterday, or the other day when the other region was here, Tina, the GM, was in the room. So I recognized Danielle in front of everyone. It was funny because at the very end, I did tell Danielle what I was going to do. And I was like, can I share your story with all these GMs in the room? And she goes, yeah. She goes, I've always wanted to go to those meetings. She goes, I think they just go and play dodgeball. And I was like, they don't, I promise you, okay? But she goes, I've always wanted to go. And I was like, you might not be there in person, but I want people to know, just like you have team members that are doing the same thing, I want people to know that people like me that are just guests, we see the impact that your servers and your bartenders are having. And so every one of you received a recognition card. I want you to grab that recognition card. And here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to give you one challenge. I know you already do this back in your sports bar, so I'm going to ask that you take that recognition card, and in the next 24 hours, I want you to give it to someone else, okay? You can give it to someone on the AV team. You can give it to someone. You could go leave it. If you haven't checked, I think most of you checked out of your hotel, but if you haven't, you could leave it for the person that's cleaning your room. You can give it to someone in the airport. It doesn't have to be someone within the group, but can you get in the habit of seeing people and recognizing people? Now, I think I see you, but I don't know. Is Ellen in the room? Ellen, you here? Is that you? You gonna wave to me? Ellen, wave if that's you. Is that Ellen? Ellen, is that you? Wave if that's you. All right, I'm gonna do a little, I always try to practice what I actually teach, so I wanna do a little recognition. So Ellen, can you come up here for me, please? Everybody give Ellen some love. No. Look at the love that you're getting. So, on the front of all these cards, it says, hey, you light things up. And I put Ellen, I never knew Ellen before I got here this week, but I put Ellen, you light things up in the way that you shift the energy of spaces that you are in. Your presence makes people feel welcome, and more importantly, it makes them feel wanted. And I go, and this is one of your many gifts that you offer the world, and I think it makes people and this brand and every sports bar better, and we are lucky to have people like you, and I'm lucky to have met you. Everybody give her some love. Thank you. Thank you.
I love it. It's so cute.
Good job. I'm proud of you. There you go. There's your card. You got it. There you go. All right. All right. So let's bring this home. I got like 2 minutes. I'm going to wrap this up. Here's what I want you to know. The last thing is, can you just find the good and recognize it? I love it. You all are already doing it. You did it with the little W pins. I saw in the sports bar, you already have your recognition cards. Y'all doing it. Just keep making it more intentional. And here's my last couple things. Everyone leaves this program. They're like, all right, but how do I actually apply this? I'm going to give you 3 takeaways that all of you can do. Number 1, I wanted to give you a resource that every one of you can do with the leadership team back in your sports bar. So we created a trust assessment that is completely free that takes less than 5 minutes. We are not going to email you if you take it, so you're not going to get bogged down by me. But what happens, people are like, this is great, but we created an assessment that measures your ability to build trust in yourself, with each other and your ability to repair trust once it's been broken. And then if you take that assessment, it gives you a 13-page report about what you need to do to actually build more trust. And then if you do it as a team, one of the last pages in there is if you did it together as a team in the sports bar, here are the 10 questions that you all should discuss together. You don't have to do it, but I wanted you to have something you can take away and do something with based on this. Number 2 is, can you just pick one of the 6 leadership moves, these trust moves that we talked about, and do something with it? And every one of you in the next 24 hours can go and at least give that recognition card to someone to say, this is who we are as a brand, and this is just what we do. And so I'll end with this. Every year, I told you I try to go to Hawaii. Y'all, it's my favorite place I've ever been. In my first year, I went by myself. And y'all, I don't know what I was thinking. While I was there, I was like, I want to do one of those excursions. And so I signed up to go swimming with dolphins in the middle of the ocean. I thought that sounded like a good idea, all right? And so I get on the boat, and I am the only person on the boat without their family. Everyone else is with other people they know. So the crew comes around, they give us the snorkels, the fins, the goggles. So I'm just sitting on the back of the boat by myself, and we're about 2 hours out to sea, and the captain finally sees the dolphins jumping up and down in the water, and he goes, go, go, go. And everyone starts jumping out of the boat, and I go, okay. And I jump out of the boat, and when I jump out of the boat, this is what I see. This is my GoPro. And so for the first 15 seconds, y'all, it's the most magical experience I've ever been through until water starts to fill up my mask. And what I don't tell you is I don't swim very well. And I thought, I got snorkels, fins, and a goggles on. I'm sure that I'll be okay. Lies, okay? And so I'm trying to recover. I'm trying to get the water out. I'm trying to tread water. It is not going well. So I'm like, Justin, stay calm. Just go back to the boat. I turn around to go back to the boat. Did anybody see that movie, Open Water? Okay, if you didn't watch it, I'm gonna give it away. It's based on a real life story. They took a bunch of people scuba diving. The crew counts the manifest wrong, and at the end of the movie, they left multiple people in the middle of the ocean. P.S., they're never found again, okay? So all of a sudden, I turn around, the boat is 0.25 miles away. And I was like, well, I got 3 choices. I'm gonna get right with Jesus and call it a day because it's about to be over. And I was like, I am not ready for that. Number 2, he had said, if any of y'all get in trouble, flag us down like this, and we'll come save you. I was like, I will not be that guy on the boat today. I will not, okay? And so the only way that I knew I can get back to the boat, this is embarrassing, I'm aware of it. I literally got on my back, and for 0.2 miles, I literally do this the entire way back to the boat. And I get to the edge of the boat, and I don't know if you can see in this photograph, but I look at the captain, and I'm like, sir, can I get one of those pool noodles? And he gives me the pool noodle, and the rest of the experience was remarkable. And I tell you that because I work with a lot of leaders just like you who jump into situations every day without the tools to be successful. And I think we all get to make a choice about how we're gonna show up, how we're gonna use our presence when we walk out of this room. Listen, no one conference is going to give you every tool that you need to be successful, but I sure believe that it can give you 1 or 2 tools to be more successful. You are leaving this conference not just with more information, you are leaving now with the responsibility to build more trust with where you live it, lead it, and love it. And I believe if you do that, you will continue to be the greatest sports bar in America. Thank you, B-Dubs. I appreciate you all very much. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Woo! Thank you. I appreciate it. Do you need this? Okay.
Do you guys all just have all the feels right now? I have all the feels. That was